and welcome to Rotted Reviews, and Happy New Year's Eve, everybody. 2021 is on its way out. 2022 approaches us. Of course, this last year couldn't just leave quietly. It had to get one last dig in with the passing of Betty White. Rest in peace, Betty. Such an iconic legend, she will absolutely be missed. Screw this year, let's put it behind us, and to do that, I'm going to go ahead and close things out with this last review here, which is a Rotted request, and it was requested by patron Shifty, who asked me to take a look at the 2018 episode of Into the Dark, New Year, New You. The fourth episode of Season 1. Throughout this channel's life, I have reviewed several episodes of Into the Dark now, including Pilgrim, A Nasty Piece of Work, and others. And I would have to say that overall, they've kind of wound up in a place of slightly above average mediocrity. I did like Pilgrim a great deal, but I think that was also because there's not a whole lot of good Thanksgiving horror movies out there, so I was just really pleasantly surprised to have something other than Thanksgiving to show people. So in this episode / movie, I'm just going to say movie from here, we wind up in a situation where four friends that have been kind of, not necessarily estranged, but have drifted apart in life are getting back together for their little friendship reunion to celebrate the new year. Alexis, Kayla, Claire, and Danielle are all hunkering down for some good old girls' night debauchery, and we're kind of catching up with who they are, who they were, and their general interaction with one another. Most notably is the standout of Danielle, who is a major influencer. The kind of influencer that has 1 million followers and has cosmetic deals and hair care products and skincare products and is hobnobbing with Hollywood, that kind of thing. So this reunion is naturally a little bit gossipy in terms of trying to get some information out of Danielle about what it's been like living the rich life. Unfortunately, as they all start digging and dishing with one another, darker elements of their past come back to haunt them, and this night turns out way different than they expected. On a practical storyline, logical level, this one was a little bit of a reach for me. I've talked recently about the notion of escalation of things, that once you try to get past the point of grievances and actually get into bodily harm or worse, there needs to be a bit of a logical reason for it, something that makes sense, something that can really kind of make sense to the audience in terms of that escalation. What would push people that far? And I think that this movie addressed that. I don't know if it sold it, though. There was a little bit of a part of me that was watching this unfold and watching these people do some terrible things to one another and trying to kind of figure out the justification behind it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the way that this movie played out with introducing the characters and establishing a lot of their backstory as things kind of unfolded throughout the night did a very sufficient job of explaining why they should hate each other, why they should never talk to each other again, but why they should do what they do in this movie, that was a tough sell. I'm going to say that it was believable enough that it didn't completely break the immersion for me, but I'm not convinced that it sold it fully. There were some standout components of this episode, and I think not the least of which was the performances. Suki Waterhouse, 𝗘𝗾𝘂𝗶𝗽𝗺𝗀, and Melissa Berglund did a fantastic job as Alexis, Kayla, and Chloe respectively, but I think the real standout for me was Carly Chaikin playing Danielle. I've honestly been a big fan of hers ever since she turned out to be one of the best parts of one of the best TV shows I've ever seen, Mr. Robot. I think that her acting chops have been tried and true and proven, and that just continues on with this episode. I think to actually sell the story as well as it did required those performances to be spot on, and they were. I think for me where this movie fell a little bit flat is just its general level of predictability, which is kind of surprising, and let me explain. We basically had a situation here of revenge and comeuppance tales. You know, we find out the terrible things that terrible people have done over time, and they react to it in ways that just kind of spiral out of control. It's not an unheard of trope, and it's something that a lot of anthology series will kind of rely on down the line. Even shows like The Twilight Zone will come up with their tales of comeuppance that just kind of seem like, okay, well, it's a bad person doing a bad thing, and something bad happens to them, often with a twist of irony to kind of really dig the fantasy sci-fi element in there, which is always fun. But it's always a little bit of the same thing. For me, those episodes are just kind of, they're the fun ones, they're the quality ones, but they're also kind of the throwaway ones that kind of happen in between the stuff of real imagination and real interest. And that's kind of how I felt about this episode of Into the Dark, which the surprising thing for me on this is that it was the 4th episode ever. I'm not saying that this storyline is the one that the writers fall back on when there's absolutely nothing else happening, when the blank page is staring them down and all they can come up with is this. That's not exactly it. I'm just saying that this is a well-worn trope, and to fall back on it is something that I would think would happen later in the series. Nevertheless, well-worn tropes aside, I thought this one was executed fairly well. There just wasn't a whole lot really new brought to the table. So even though I have nothing against this one, and I'm not going to recommend against it, not at all, this isn't the kind of thing that I'm going to run up and down the street with a crier's bell saying, "Hear ye, everybody should watch this episode." But beyond that, if you have some spare time kicking around, or if you're making your way through the Into the Dark series, I think this is a fairly following along that slightly above average quality type episode. So it's certainly one to watch if you're in the mood for this kind of thing. And I'm happy to have given it a watch. So thank you to Shifty for recommending this one, and thank you for watching this video, and thank you for sticking with me for 2021. I hope for some great things in the year ahead for all of us. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.